Hedda Gabler comes under the literary era of realism, especially the Victorian era. Realism is a period of literature which explores the different wakes of life in its raw, sordid reality. Unlike the Romantic era, it reflects the contemporary society and the individual's struggles. Ibsen's Hedda Gabler shows the individual's feelings of alienation and the actual alienation from society. Hedda cannot be herself quite literally. She is alienated from herself, devoid of a feminine self and lacking resources that would allow her to live as a woman. This inability is an outcome of the fact that she lives in a society that does not provide her with a law, that is, with a language, norm, culture, and a symbolic order through which she can constitute and understand herself as a woman. Hedda's story enables spectators to explore tragedy as a genre that is specifically feminine.
Hedda Gabler is known as a suicide play and more commonly known as a well-made play. The book follows Eugene Scribe's idea of a well-made play. A well-made play must include a secret, Hedda's affair with Lovebird, and discovery of the secret by Brack. Dramatic irony, the audience continuously know more than the characters in the play. And 2. The chronological form. Hedda Gabler is set in the same house throughout the play. And lastly, a hero-type character who reaches their demise, which in this context is Hedda.
During the time period of 1850s, the first wave of feminism broke out. Following the definition of realism, Ibsen knew what was changing and transforming in the society during this phase. He displayed the changing role of women and their actions. Mrs. Elvsted is an example of the so-called new women who are women who push against the limits which society had imposed on them during the 19th century. Mrs. Elvsted leaves her loveless husband and chooses to realize her self-value, assisting and inspiring a promising right. Her action is a breakthrough in changing gender norms.
Ibsen also seems to have reflected the contemporary political struggle in his book. During the 19th century, there was a diplomatic struggle between Sweden and Norway about the unequal representation of the issues in Norway. This conflict between the two countries posed a struggle for men. What side do they fight for? Hedda's irrationality could reflect the uncertainty of the members of the public. Perhaps it was confused as a result of two contrasting ideas of Victorian idols.
Many argue that the complex characters and conflicts of Hedda Gabler aren't just to echo the themes of feminism, but to bring out the truths of human psychology, the dark truth of human nature, and the capability of the human psyche to destroy itself. Hedda chooses to sacrifice her feelings because she wants to live in a superficial world created by her own imagination. She believes this fantasy of hers is true and safe, but in reality, it is the closest to her own destruction. This internal struggle is a universal theme for human nature. Ibsen specifically identified the fight between ability and desire, between will and circumstance. During his tour of Europe, Ibsen may have come across Darwin's and Freud's theories of evolution and that of the human psyche. This may have influenced him to portray such themes in his book.
Desmonds have just returned from their 6-month honeymoon. Aunt Julia announces that she has mortgaged her annuity to provide security on the expensive new house. She also mentions that Eilert Lovberg has published a new book. Hedda enters and complains that the maid has opened the windows. Hedda is very particular about lighting, and Desmond is eager to please her. Aunt Julia leaves, and Desmond asks Hedda to be nicer to her. They agree to have her over again later that day. Suddenly, Mrs. Elvsted, an old acquaintance of both, arrives. She is in town looking for Eilert Lovberg, who has, for 2 years, served as a tutor in the Elvsted household. Mrs. Elvsted informs the Desmonds that Eilert has been free of drunkenness for 2 years, but she fears a relapse now that Eilert has returned to the city. She tells Desmond what a tremendous success Eilert's new book has been. It is obvious that Tesman has to make an effort not to seem jealous. Tesman promises to be supportive of Eilert if he comes to visit, but Hedda proposes that he go so far as to write to Eilert and invite him to visit. She suggests he write Eilert a long letter. Tesman goes to do this, and Hedda presses Mrs. Elvsted to confide in her now that she has gotten rid of Tesman. Hedda gets Mrs. Elvsted to admit that she has an unhappy relationship with her husband, the district magistrate, and now she left him and her current equation with Lovborg. Also, she says that she fears he has another woman in his life, a woman he has spoken of only once. Apparently, he used to be involved with a woman who, when they parted, wanted to shoot him with pistols. Mrs. Elvsted leaves and Judge Brack arrives. Hedda sees Mrs. Elvsted out while Brack and Tesman converse alone. Brack says that Eilert has very good prospects and that Tesman may have to compete with him for his professorship. Tesman is seriously alarmed. Brack assures him that he should get the position anyway, but Hedda offers little sympathy. Brack leaves. Tesman tells Hedda that they will have to cut back their spending. Hedda says that at least she still has one thing to amuse her, her pistols.
Hedda is standing at an open window, loading a pistol, and she calls out a greeting to Judge Brack, who's walking down the back garden path. She then pretends to try and shoot him, and when he enters, he gently takes the pistols away from her. He has come to speak again to Tesman about Lovborg and the professorship, but Tesman is away visiting Aunt Jule. Brack and Hedda sit down then. He's eager to gossip. She insists that she has missed Brack and that her vacation with Tesman was very boring. She begs Brack not to use the word love, and she tells him that she married Tesman only because she was tired of the rigors that came with being single. Tesman enters. He's carrying some academic books. Hedda and Brack exchange amused glances. Tesman is eager to read them, especially Elliot Lovborg's new book, and he goes to freshen up, announcing as he goes that Aunt Jule won't be visiting Hedda that night. With Tesman still in the room, Hedda complains to Brack that she isn't happy. Brack suggests that she must find something to amuse her, and Hedda says that she would like for Tesman to enter politics. Brack hints that she will soon have children to occupy her attention, but Hedda says that she finds no happiness in things that make a claim on her freedom. Tesman then enters, dressed for the party. Hedda suggests that if upon his arrival, Lovborg decides not to join the men for the party, he can dine with her, and Tesman thinks that this would be improper, since Aunt Jule would not be there. Edith Lovborg arrives and discusses the new book. He says that it's not good, because he was simply trying to appease the masses with a general history of the past. However, his other book, the manuscript of which he had with him, would certainly be worth reading. The new book contained a prediction for the future. Eliot also states that he won't compete with Tesman for a position at the university, as he only wants public acknowledgement of his reform and success. Tesman is relieved and exclaims to Hedda that now nothing stands in their way, but Hedda resents her inclusion in his excitement. Brack and Tesman go to an adjoining room to enjoy their punch, while Hedda entertains Eliot, and they reminisce about how Eliot would confess to his drinking problems. When their relationship as comrades became too serious, Hedda broke it off, even threatening to shoot Eliot with her father's pistols. Yet she was too afraid of scandal, and it was at this point that Eliot went to the Elvsteds. At that moment, Miss Elvsted enters. She greets the men in the other room, and Hedda makes her sit beside her, so that Hedda herself is in the middle. Eliot asks Hedda to admire Miss Elvsted, and he states that she inspires him to keep his life on the right track. Hedda, however, insinuates that some might think that he felt insecure and did not have enough confidence in himself. Miss Elvsted is alarmed when Hedda mentions Brack's amusement at Elliot's hesitance to drink the punch, but Elliot seems resolved and declares he doesn't care what anyone thinks. Hedda tells Miss Elvsted that she apparently had no reason to be anxious when she visited that morning. Elliot is surprised and asks what Miss Elvsted could have been worried about. He is then angered by Miss Elvsted's presumption that he might go on a drinking binge now that he was in town, and in defiance, he quickly swore down a drink and pours himself another. Miss Elvsted is horrified, and Elliot asks whether it was a conspiracy between her and her husband that Miss Elvsted come to town to spy on him. He decides to go to the party with Judge Brack and Tesman, and he takes the manuscript of his upcoming book with him to show parts of it to Tesman at the party. He promises to return later to escort Miss Elvsted home. The three men leave. Miss Elvsted is very worried, but Hedda insists that she stay and wait for Elliot's return. She promises that he will return.
Ibsen's work was an attack on marriage and families. Back in the 19th century, the foundation of the Norwegian society was based on marriage and family. They believed in the institution of marriage and one-unit lifestyle. Ibsen identified these flaws in the system and chose to address these social issues through his works. He believed that the societal setup put too much pressure and expectations on men, and especially women. He brings out his disgust through Hedda's and Brack's characters. Hedda shows great reluctance towards family life. She does not believe in the institution of marriage, and nor does Brack. And Hedda's hatred for just the thought of her hinted or quasi-pregnancy. It can be seen in Act 1, and I quote, "Test me, how she has filled out on the journey. Hedda, oh, do be quiet."
Ibsen resists and dissects the convention and ideologies of the bourgeois culture in his work. The restricted social behavior of the upper bourgeois provided serious penalties for any individuality or creativity. The life of a nonconformist was difficult, if not impossible, in this social class. The restrictions this behavior placed on the freedom, integrity, and the fulfillment of the individual provide a major issue in Ibsen's dramas. He presents his dislike in his book. He gives Hedda an upper bourgeois background and makes her so proud and stubborn that she looks down upon anyone who doesn't share the same taste as him. He also critiques the effacement of women's subjectivity in the Western bourgeois society by portraying Hedda's imprisonment in her own mind due to the social norms. The internal struggle makes her develop a lot of manipulative and destructive tendencies which later lead to her own demise. Despite the pretensions of both the upper and the middle bourgeois, all the characters in the play except Brack are at risk of poverty. Hedda and Thea both married for financial security. Thea risks both her social and financial security when she leaves her husband to follow Elliot Lovberg. Desmond's finances are threatened by the prospect of not getting the professorship, and his aunts have mortgaged their annuity to help him buy his new house. So we see that this apparently rock-solid bourgeois is actually fragile and vulnerable to loss of wealth and status. Through the plot and the characters of the play, we not only see the destructive nature of the bourgeois culture, but we start to dislike it and the personalities it produces.
Independent. Dominating.
Crazy. Psychotic.
Yeah.
Aristocracy. Power.